these trees were knocked down by the blast, and it's an enigma that has confounded our reality scientists for a long, long time. Was it a UFO that exploded? Was it some kind of weird nuclear device? Was it a comet, or not a comet, but an asteroid or meteor or some such? A lot of different hypotheses. But he's saying, no, in this vision he was told that it was a deliberate act on their part to test the overflow of these energies, which, it's really interesting to me because he does describe himself as a contactee, a UFO contactee, not an alien abductee, but a contactee, and of course his experiences in the Amazon involved him seeing a classic George Adamski style nuts and bolts flying saucer, but which at the time that he was witnessing it, he goes, I know that those were hoaxed photographs, and yet here I am seeing this thing. Of course he was under the influence of psychedelics, but as he says, he's one of the preeminent people on the effects of psychedelics, so he should be able to discern a hallucination from a real phenomena. And it came out of a cloud in the classic cloud cigar type of UFO where there's this cylindrical anomalous object that seems to eject other objects that then fly around. And so he posits that the UFO phenomena is this culture trying to get our attention, trying to lead us away from the potential of us destroying not just ourselves with atomic weapons, but their reality as well. Now, he says that by this point, at our time point in their reality, they're about 1,200, 1,500 years technologically ahead of us, and they've already populated the stars. So it's not that this is their home world, it's not that this is the only world that they live on, it's their home world.
Right, it has some almost like religious significance in a certain sense. It's the origin of everything, and there's sort of like a reverence for preserving it. And so they're worried. In their alternate time stream, they did the atomic blast as a test, just to test to see their hypothesis that it would leak over into the other time stream, our time stream, which they had discovered. And then when they realized that was true, they became concerned that, we were going to develop atomic weapons, which we did, and then we wouldn't be so advanced enough to know that it would F up and leak over into this other time stream. And so they're concerned about that and is trying to stop us from doing any more nuclear blasts than we've already done.
And which, in fact, the UFO contactee movement in the 50s and 60s that the United States experienced, and really the world, but particularly in the United States, that was one of the central messages, was you've got to stop exploding these atomic weapons. You don't understand, the effects it's having in other parts of the universe and in other realities. They may not have couched it in terms of, solitons of improbability and quantum mechanics and that sort of thing, but, the occult world has been very well versed in the idea of alternate dimensions, however you want to define them, and in the 50s and 60s contactee literature, which is very much springing from out of the occult literature, the occult experience. There's this message from these space brothers that, hey, you need to stop doing that. So it's really kind of interesting. And actually that even in the modern abductee, the more modern abductee literature, that was another central theme, the idea that we're destroying the Earth, though usually in those cases it's almost always from a ecological standpoint as opposed to a nuclear weapons standpoint. But so Vallée was saying a lot of things that influenced McKenna as far as his ideas about the nature of the phenomena. McKenna did really conceive of the UFO phenomena as being this result of what he believed to be the overmind, the oversoul, and which he agreed with Vallée that it was acting as a cultural thermostat, that whenever human society got overly one thing or another, in the case of modern man becoming overly rational, overly scientific, and to the detriment of our ethics and the environment, that this overmind, redirects human consciousness through these anomalous encounters that influence the culture and society at large to go in a different direction. And this is something that both Vallée and McKenna were very concerned about, though for slightly different reasons, and they had their differences. But in a lot of ways, they had a lot of the same ideas. But So with this Soliton of Improbability, McKenna is positing, again, that the UFO phenomenon is part of that, though he never really went into much detail about that. But he's suggesting this alternative to his ideas about what's going to happen towards the end of 2012, that perhaps that is what they're leading towards, that this other time streams civilization is trying to bring our time streams back together, and that perhaps that is what's going to happen at the end of 2012. And I know there's been so much said about 2012 in the last year and a half, 2 years. I mean, obviously, anybody who's been in the New Age community has been hearing about it for a decade or more. But, you know, for the average listener, they're probably just hearing about this, and then they might hear, oh, that's that Sony movie that's coming out, you know, what they've been seeing the previews for with the Tibetan running across the hills and banging the gong, and then this huge tidal wave coming, and it's all disasters and whatnot. And that's a very strange viral ARG marketing program campaign for that movie. But, you know, there's been a number of books on the subject, and you've had guests on talking about this, and it is more than just this, you know, goofy New Age idea about the end times. You know, there is much more to it, especially when you consider the fact that somebody like McKenna arrived at that date in a completely circuitous route that didn't have anything to do with studying the Mayans. Mm-hmm. And the Mayans being the one that most people point to, that's they who said, you know, the reality was going to change. It would be the end of an age and the birth of a new one, at least on their calendar. And he's basically suggesting in different sources. I've since found another article where he apparently wrote more specifically about what he thought might happen, but he was suggesting that a huge portal might be created in which we would have the opportunity in this reality to go over to that reality, or that somehow the act of creating this time bridge or this reality bridge would bring our time streams back together, our reality streams, our Earth back together. And, you know, his whole idea about 2012 is that we will be unrecognizable to ourselves after that point. And that's always been a hard contention for me to swallow. It's the only thing I can conceive of is like, okay, it'll be like a dream. Mm-hmm. You know, yeah. The dream time seems pretty strange to me. It seems like the strangest thing I've ever experienced besides psychedelics, and really there's a lot of similarities there because they're both allowing access to the unconscious, and it's the unconscious that seems to be the everyday portal to much of these realms.
Well, what about the notion that our waking reality is really what is bizarre? We just think of it as not bizarre because we spend so much time there, and that we have a sort of chauvinistic, provincial kind of view, and that if we took a step back and thought, well, you know, maybe that is pretty weird that you can have thoughts, but then you're not able to just manifest them like you can do in a dream. That why is that weird wall there? So you understand what I'm saying, to kind of flip it around?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
absolutely. No, I think that as you know, my feeling is exactly that's pretty much what the teachings of all Aboriginal cultures have been telling us. It may not be the literal myth that they're living their lives by, but I think that's the implications of so much of this anomalous stuff that we investigate, is that it's pointing towards this idea. In some ways, those two realms can be one, and I think really that's what McKenna keeps going to as this idea of what he thinks, you know, human destiny is this interiorizing of our body image, but the exteriorizing of our imaginations and our souls, this kind of, you know, manifesting, like with Buddhists and their approach to lucid dreaming. It's all about becoming more lucid in this reality, and in some ways I think that means making it more dreamlike by virtue of being able to more easily manifest what you want to in this reality, as opposed to just, I've learned how to, you know, manifest, you know, 13 virgins in heaven in my dreams, you know. Oh
yeah, that was a good one. No. So so